Tell me what you think I'm doing wrong. Tell me what you think I'm doing right. If you said in the first one, I'm looking up before I make contact with the ball, you'd be correct. And if you said in the second one, I'm actually watching the ball hit my strings, you'd be right. But why is watching the ball hit your strings so important? Let's find out. There are 3 reasons why you should be watching the ball hit your strings. Number 1, stability. It gives you a much better stable base because you're not twisting your head. Number 2, having better clean contact. Now you might say, well, that's the same as stability, but there is a situation where amateurs often miss the ball, and that is where you really need to be watching it hit your strings. And number 3, disguise, not giving your opponent information about where you're going to hit the ball. So let's look at those 3 reasons briefly now. You've probably heard the phrase, watch the ball at all times. I believe that to be wrong. It's not possible to watch the ball hit your strings, follow it onto the front wall, follow it into the back, for example, watch your opponent hit it, follow it onto the front wall and follow it back to your strings. You would get a headache and probably a neck ache too. The ball is moving too fast for you to do that. So what that idea does is it forces amateurs to miss the part that makes the most difference because they feel that watching it onto the front wall is really important, but it's not. This is what most amateurs do. Now I'm going to be pretending without the ball. The ball is coming, here it comes, it bounces, and just at about this point, I focus my attention, my vision here, and as I swing to hit the ball, I begin to look up so that I can follow it onto the front wall. And you miss this part of the swing and the contact. And you say, yeah, but Philip, how much difference can this make? Well, in most of the shots, not much. But as we'll see in the second reason, clean contact, there are situations where it can make a huge difference. Now, watch my hips, watch my feet, watch my stability. The ball is coming, I look up. Now I'm exaggerating a little bit. I look up, okay? I've lost my balance. It's really difficult to keep your shoulders still, keep your hips still when you look up. You naturally turn. Now watch as I demonstrate a shot where I would be watching. I still move because I'm an old man and I don't have great balance anymore, but I'm much more balanced than I was. Now this is a static demonstration and it's even more important when you're running around and you're stretching. I cannot stress this enough. Stability is the main reason for watching the ball hit your strings. You will be so much more stable. You will hit the ball cleaner. You will hit the ball harder. You will hit it more accurately. Stability is the number 1 reason to watch the ball hit your strings. Second reason for watching the ball hit your strings is that clean contact. Now, in general, amateur squash players don't miss the ball. Beginners sometimes do, but competitive club players very rarely miss the ball. But when they do, it's because it's close to the wall. When the ball hits the sidewall, 3 things happen. It changes angle, it changes spin, and it changes speed. The longer those things have got to take effect, the harder it is to hit the ball. So making contact as soon after the ball hits the wall is the best thing. But can you imagine trying to make contact when you're not even looking? So when that ball hits the wall or is very close, this is especially important for you to make sure you're watching the ball hit your strings. You will very rarely miss the ball if you are doing that. And if you do miss the ball, then there's probably another reason. So make sure when the ball is close to the wall, you are watching. And by watching, you get to judge your distance. It's impossible to judge your distance when you're not watching. But when you are further away and you can watch it, you can judge it. So that's the second reason. And it is important, even though it happens less often than the stability point. Reason number 3 is disguise. Now, I will be making a separate video about disguise and deception, so consider this to be an introduction to the idea. Thinking about what I've already said, that when you begin to hit the ball, you look up. Where you look is information giving your opponent knowledge where you're planning to hit the ball. But by keeping your head still, they won't know that. Now, it's not a lot of information, and it's not really early. I mean, nobody sort of looks up way before they hit the ball, but it's information. So if you can, when the ball comes, if you can keep your head still, that is less information for your opponent about where the ball is going, and that's really important. Don't give them any help about where you're going to hit the ball. We're going to talk about that a little bit more when we talk about the 3 stages of watching your opponent. I believe that there are 3 stages of watching your opponent hit the ball. Stage number 1, the beginner stage. This is where you focus totally on the ball and forget your opponent. Stage number 2, the competitive club player. This is where you do almost the opposite, where you almost forget the ball and you focus on your opponent, especially the point of contact and where their racket is. And stage number 3, the advanced stage, where you focus on the ball, the point of contact, your opponent's position, and tactical information that you have. Now, I want you to understand that these 3 stages are just guides. There's no particular point in time. You've been playing this many months, so therefore you have to move on to the other stage. They're guides for you to have something to work towards. So let's look at those stages in turn. Stage 1, the beginner stage. So this is where, as I said in the introduction, you focus totally on the ball. The ball is up here. You are not watching your opponent. You are focused on the ball. The reason that I say that this is the first stage is because when you're learning, when you're beginning to play squash, you've got to think about your own body and moving around and swinging and the grip and the timing, the bounce, the distance. There's a lot of things to think about, and having to focus on anything else is really difficult. The analogy that I like to use is when you're first learning to drive, you focus totally on being able to control the car. The clutch, the brake, the accelerator, the steering, the indicators, the mirrors, all of those things. And then as you become much more comfortable, your awareness of what's around you increases. And you've probably, if you've been driving for long enough, you realise that you don't even think about how to physically control the car. Your attention is on the pedestrians walking across the road there, or that car that looks like it's going to overtake me and then maybe cut across me, all of those things. And it's the same for squash. When you first begin, you're controlling the car, which is, of course, you're controlling the body. So my advice is, when you are first starting and the ball is in the front, focus on the ball. Don't worry about your opponent. Stage number 2 is for competitive club players. This is where you focus most of your attention, not all of it, but most of it, on your opponent. Still think about the ball, but look at their positioning. If you see that they are waiting, they're probably going to hit a post. Now, I know that some players like to wait and then hit the ball down the wall. There will be players who will deceive you and try to trick you, but most of the time they're focused on what they're doing. And by looking at their body position, are they here? Are they here? Are they very close to the wall? Because that makes it a bit harder to go straight. There's a lot of information there. Now, Ramat Khan, the famous coach of Jahangir Khan, told me to focus on the hips. The hips tell you where to go. And I think Shakira was wrong. I think the hips do lie, because nowadays we've got much lighter rackets. We've got much different, the technique is different, much different, sorry. So it is much harder to see exactly where you're going to hit the ball from watching your opponent, but there is information there that you can see. And a perfect example of this is the reverse angle. So often when you're watching from the balcony, a player going to hit a reverse angle is so clear. But for the opponent who's down here watching the ball, it's much harder. But from the balcony, you can see the ball come and you can see that they're just positioning themselves, the time that they make contact, bang. It's so obvious. And that's why lots of club players play it, because it can be effective. But when you get a little bit better, it just becomes too obvious. And I know that the professionals play it, but the professionals play it with a lot more disguise. Okay? So, if you can focus on the opponent's position, you'll get a lot of information, especially the moment of impact. Now, you might say to me, but that's watching the ball. But not really. What you're doing is you're watching where they're making contact. In front, cross court. Here, drive. Here, boast. Now, I know it's not that simple. I know that they will flick. They will try to deceive you. But by watching, you'll get a lot of information, and then you can time your split step to the moment just before contact, and you'll have a much better chance of getting to the ball. Stage 2, focus on your opponent. They will give you a lot of information. So we are back to the forehand for stage 3, advanced players. So at this point, when the ball is up here and you're on the tee and you're watching your opponent, you are focused on the ball, especially where they're making contact. You are also expanding your concentration, expanding your awareness to the position of your opponent. Now, of course, at higher levels, there's a lot less information. I know for sure that if I were to be playing against a professional and they are in this position, I have literally zero idea. I can guess, maybe get a bit lucky, and actually I'm pretty good at guessing. But anticipating where your opponent is going to hit the ball is very, very difficult. And there are experts at it, and they cannot articulate how they know, but maybe they just see in the hits, maybe just there's some preparation. It's almost like poker. There's like a tell, but some people are very good at bluffing. Maybe I sort of blink, or my eyes open just as I see my 2 aces, or whatever, I don't know. And some players are very good at seeing that happening. But if you're not even looking, then you're not getting any information. And the last point is the tactical situation. How often have they gone straight? How often have they gone cross court? That is a consideration. And at stage 1, when you're a beginner, don't even think about thinking about that. Stage 2, it's a lot harder because you're still focused on yourself and you're still focused on watching your opponent. But stage 3, you've got the time and the mental capacity to consider those things. Now, I'm not going to tell you that just because he's hit or she's hit, just because they've hit every single shot straight from that position, that you should cover the straight more, because it's more complicated than that. But if you've got it in your mind, yeah, maybe I'll be edging over and I'll be saying to myself, there's a 90% chance they're going to hit straight here, so I'm going to give 90% of my focus on that. Well, maybe not 90%, but hopefully you get the point, that at this point you have to take into account all of the previous shots that they've played. And that's why playing somebody new in a tournament can be so difficult, because you don't have that previous information. So stage 3, watch the ball. Watch your opponent, but especially the moment of contact. And think about all of the tactical information that you may have accumulated from playing them previously.
Let's turn that theory into a practical exercise. Watch and see if you can anticipate where I was going to hit the ball, and exactly what information was it that told you that. Pay special attention to the point of contact. Use the front-back game to improve your opponent watching skills.
Here are the three most common questions I get asked when I teach watching the ball hit the strings and watching your opponent. Question number one, what should I watch when I'm looking in the back corner? And the answer is, well, firstly, you shouldn't be turning and looking directly in the corner. That's not a good idea. But you shouldn't just be looking like halfway either. One thing that I used to love doing was that I would do a boast and drive exercise with my pupil, and when I noticed that they are really not watching, they hit the straight drive, and then I simply just hit the ball straight against the sidewall. And they're looking around because they didn't even see it. And it's a really graphic reminder that they're not watching. So what you should be doing is you should be turning, so out of the corner of your eye, I mean, I can see the camera, you can see me, out of the corner of my eye, I can see them. I can't focus on them because it's not in the center of my vision, it's on the side, but I will be getting some information. As the ball is moving, I will then be able to focus my attention on it. So turn, but not completely. Beginners, improvers, and newcomers should be wearing goggles. Ideally, I think everybody should be wearing goggles, and that's like a whole debate. But especially if you are new to the game and you are still learning, I highly recommend wearing goggles. The second question I get asked is, what exactly will I see? And the first thing that you need to understand and recognize is that you will not see a photograph-like image. You will not see the ball exactly on the 7th string and down this way. You won't see the logo of the ball. You won't see any of that. You will see two blurs. You will see the blur of the racket in your vision, and you will see a blur of the ball coming, stopping it as the point of contact, and then going away again. Now that blur might be a straight line if you've hit it back the way it's come. If it comes cross-court, it will go back again. But if you've hit it somewhere else, the blur of the ball will be in a different direction. As you get better and better at watching the ball hit the strings, you will begin to recognise where you hit the ball on the racket face, assuming that you're not hitting the ball too much in front of you, and assuming that you've got a slightly open racket face. You'll be able to see where you've hit it, but do not think that you're going to see a photograph-like image. And remember, after you've made contact, you keep your head still for a fraction of a second. Now, some people do ask me, well, for how long? And the reality is probably just after the follow-through. But you'll need to experiment with that. But remember, it is a blur you're going to see, not a photograph. And the third question that I often get asked is, how do I practice it? Well, the simple answer is there is no better way than getting on court and just doing some solo practice. You don't even need to worry about the type of drill. Although regular viewers will know that I am a huge fan of side to side. I think that's a great exercise for watching the ball hit the strings. Did you notice I didn't do it because I was too worried about hitting the camera with the ball? So, more or less, any solo drill where you are not hitting the ball too hard and you're not having to move around too much is perfect for just practicing it. Remember, you're learning a new habit. It's not particularly a new skill, it's a new habit. And replacing bad habits with good habits takes time. Now, you might have noticed from the thumbnail, if I used it, I don't know, a ball that I created here. I created this ball because I did find that some students did have a lot of trouble watching the ball hit the strings. They were finding it difficult to focus. Now, older readers might have heard something called the Inner Game of Tennis. And the Inner Game of Tennis was this book written in the 1970s. And one of the things that it mentioned, it's much more complicated than that, was watching the seam on the tennis ball. And it is possible with practice to notice the spot on the ball. But this ball makes it much easier to focus on the ball. It doesn't take long to make one of these balls. I just bought some paint from one of the sort of pound shops that you get in the United Kingdom and a couple of little paint brushes. I did this twice, so you paint it, let it dry, you paint it again. Doesn't make many changes to the ball. As you can see, this is a red dot. I always feel that this is better when I'm working with my pupils for them to be able to consistently hit the ball without the ball getting cold. It's an interesting experiment that we'll talk about in another video, but it can help you focus on the ball more and watch it hit your strings.
Alright, that's it, squashers. Thanks for watching. Let me know in the comments if you've got any doubts or questions. Watch this video if you want to learn to get the ball out of the back corners. And here's another bunch of other really good videos. And remember, do something every freaking day to improve your squash. See ya.